Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 2019-2020 Student Member of the Board of Education debate. My name is Savannah Quick, and I am CRASC's Secretary of Education. I will be moderating tonight's debate. Before we begin the debate, will everyone please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Here's how tonight's debate will work. Each candidate will have 3 minutes to speak and introduce themselves. The order of the speakers have been determined by a random drawing prior to debate. Questions for the candidates have been submitted by CRASC as well as online via our website, www.aacps.org/CRASC. We will not be taking questions from the audience. The candidates did not have the opportunity to review the questions prior to the debate. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond to the question with a 30-second rebuttal. There is a timer located on the rear screen of the boardroom. Please be advised that this debate is being broadcast live on AACPS TV and via AACPS's live stream channel. Once all questions have been addressed, tonight's debate will be concluded. At this time, we would like everyone to silence their cell phones. Now we will start with introductions. First, Charmi Patel. Do I keep going? Second, Tyler Bailey. Third, Rita Alvey.
5 years ago, my mom threaded Aisha Chaudhry's eyebrows. I remember watching The Office and talking to her about her 2015 student member of the board position. I was immediately interested. Being able to make a change within my community and also advocate for student rights would be a wonderful privilege. Now, 5 years later, I would like to start off by saying that I'm immensely honored to have the opportunity to be student member of the board. My name is Charmi Patel, and I'm a junior at South River High School in the STEM Magnet program. Ever since I was a young girl, I've looked for opportunities to help people, tutoring my friends in the times tables and helping my family around the house, to now serving as president of Red Cross Club, vice president of Interact Club, working with the Red Cross, Rotary, as an activities aide, a blood donor ambassador, and much more. I understand the importance of academic performance, literacy, and rigor, but I'll always be passionate about helping students thrive. As student member of the board, I would stand up for 3 initiatives: diversity, safety, and mental health. This past week at a Red Cross Leadership Conference, I signed a diversity pledge. I pledged to respect and value all student attributes. Our community is diverse, filled with students of different demographics and attributes that make up Anne Arundel County today. As student member of the board, I would work with all of these schools to make sure that regardless of these attributes, all students feel safe, valued, and respected. At the superintendent's breakfast, I spoke to board members, students, and business owners about my experience in STEM and my own battle within high school. There's so many things that students worry about: grades, class rank, jobs, college, relationships, which all take a toll on our mental health. School should be a place that students come to learn. They should not feel scared to attend school or have destructive thoughts towards themselves or their peers. As student member of the board, I would advocate for advancement in mental health initiatives, providing students with resources to help cope with everyday stresses associated with school. Anne Arundel County is incredibly fortunate to have a full student vote on the board. Connecting the bridge between students and the board, I would listen to your views and confidently express my own opinions through advisory meetings and school visits. As student member of the board, I would make our voice count. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Good evening. My name is Tyler Bailey. I'm a junior at South River High School, and obviously I'm running for student member of the Board of Education. I'd like to start off by thanking CRASC for hosting this debate, our moderators Savannah, Charmi, and Rita, and everyone in attendance and watching for making this debate possible. Over my short 17 years of being alive, I have experienced so much. 13 years of playing soccer, 8 years of Destination Imagination, and all my years of schooling have given me the tools and imagination to tackle our most important issues. There are so many things that There are so many amazing things about Anne Arundel County, AACPS, and all the people a part of this community. However, our home is in the middle of challenging times. Poverty, mental health, and a poor environment plague our school system and prevent a safe, welcoming, and creative learning environment for all our students. My campaign focuses on tackling these key issues. Our platform is designed to address the most pressing needs of the school community through inclusion, community involvement, and student activism. I believe it is time for leadership that will produce the ideas and methods needed to make Anne Arundel County Public Schools the best community of students, teachers, and parents it possibly can be.
Good evening. My name is Rita Alvey. As you all know, I'm a candidate for the student member of the board. It is my pleasure to speak before you all tonight. To start with a little bit about me, I'm an International Baccalaureate Program student at Annapolis High School. I'm involved in my school community as the president of the International Night Committee and vice president of the Future Business Leaders of America. However, my passion is most evident for policy, as I have served as a fellow for the Speaker of the House of Maryland, and I'm the current CRAS Secretary of Legislation and Superintendent's Teen Advisory Member. On a more personal note, I love the arts as I'm enrolled in AP Art and have attempted sports like tennis, although I cannot say I'm too great at either. Traveling is my favorite hobby, and my family and I have been to 48 state capitals so far, where I developed my love for history and politics, something I'm very proud of. This is my 13th year in the Anne Arundel County school system, from preschool to junior year, and I have had a pretty unique experience as a member of multiple communities. Crofton, where I live, and Annapolis, where I go to school, a true Panther at heart. My parents are immigrants from India, and values of hard work, dedication, and respect have been instilled in me, and of course, that education always comes first. Being a Muslim woman has always set me apart, but I've learned that being too different is actually one of my greatest strengths. Every opportunity to follow my passions thus far has been given to me through Anne Arundel County Public Schools, and I'm here today because I believe in providing that same or even better opportunity to all of our students and continuing to improve the school system as a duty to my community. My unique experience as a result of my leadership positions and community involvement has allowed me to recognize what can be improved in our school system. And if elected, I hope to focus on equitably distributing our funding to provide all Anne Arundel County students with exceptional resources to succeed, implementing mental health awareness initiatives, and ensuring sufficient resources to have a supportive environment in all of our schools. And most importantly, working to encourage the celebration of diversity and creating unity in our community. I intend to do this by listening to the needs of those who may be overlooked, by continuing the SMOB Advisory Council and participating in community meetings like those held in the Chesapeake Cluster, pushing for more counselors, psychologists, and smaller class sizes, and expanding programs like the Global Community Citizenship Course while leading my example on how to embrace diversity. I look forward to answering your questions tonight. Thank you.
At this time, we will begin with the questions. Charmy, you will be answering first. What do you consider the most pressing issue in AACPS?
I think that the most pressing issue in AACPS currently is the mental health. A lot of students are all trying to take on a lot of responsibility, and it's so empowering. It's so cool seeing how much that students want to do, but also realizing that they are overworking themselves and they are trying to do a lot, and sometimes they don't feel like they're valued and respected within their community. So I would like to focus on that, and I also think that mental health stems often to so many issues: school safety, class sizes, and testing, standardized testing, and so much more. So, yeah.
I also believe that mental health is the most pressing issue for Anne Arundel County Public Schools. Behavioral problems are starting in children at the age of 2. There's been almost a double increase in the number of crisis prevention units that have to be sent out to help our students. And the Anne Arundel County youth suicide rate is up 2.5% since 2012. And for every suicide attempt, there is 25, for every suicide, there's 25 suicide attempts. So that is why I believe that mental health is the most pressing issue in Anne Arundel County Public Schools, because it's affecting more students than any other issue than we can possibly imagine.
So although mental health is a huge issue, and I believe it's something that we need to work on as a community, I think it stems from the lack of unity in our school system. And I think for a long time we have worked on tolerating other people and not worked on celebrating diversity. And I think when we go ahead and celebrate that diversity, it's easier for students to feel like they're accepted, and it helps with those mental health issues that both Charmy and Tyler talked about. So that's what I believe is the biggest issue, because when we do things together as a county, it's that much easier and more efficient to move forward and bring us back to one of the best school systems in Maryland. We're currently ranked 11th in the state of Maryland. So I think we need to work together and focus on that unity within our school systems to bring us back up to that point.
Tyler, you will be starting with the answers for the next question. How can AACPS go about assisting with the mental health and addiction problems facing our community?
So I believe AACPS can help tackle these problems through more school psychologists. I also had the idea of anonymous guidance. It's part of my platform, allowing students to have one-on-ones with their guidance counselor without having to do it face-to-face. So it's less personal, and it's more you can tell them their problems, and they can tell you solutions without having to be personal about it. And with drugs, I don't know if there's any way we can solve drugs that are also tackling poverty. Most drugs happen in impoverished communities, and without resources from the county council to tackle poverty, it'd be hard to do away with drugs in our county. So poverty would need to be tackled to help with stop the spread of drugs.
How can AACPS go about assisting with the mental health and addiction problems facing our community?
So I think, as they mentioned, putting more counselors and school psychologists in our schools, funding that is incredibly important in assisting with the mental health issues. Currently, the ratio at some of our schools is above 400 students for one counselor, which I believe, quite frankly, is absolutely ridiculous. You cannot expect one counselor to be responsible for those 400 students. So definitely working on that, but working on having smaller class sizes as well. When we have smaller class sizes, we have an opportunity for students to have closer student-to-teacher relationships, which is something that the strategic plan that Dr. Arlotto has worked on this past year has put in place. So that's going ahead on the mental health question. But also, when it comes to drugs are also often an outcome of a lack of support when it comes to mental health issues. So I think when we focus on one, it will automatically help reduce the other.
So I know that Anne Arundel County for the next fiscal year has increased the budget in psychological services by $21,000 and school counseling by $39,000. So I think that these two are big factors of how we can help with the mental health initiative. But I know that a lot of students are unaware of the psychologists at our school and help that counseling can give, and either are too embarrassed or too just overwhelmed to go and actually ask for help. So I'd like to push that forward alongside Tyler's great idea of anonymous campaigning, because I know that going straight to your counselor can be scary. I also think that with substance abuse, a big factor of it is mental health, because it stems off of, oh, I don't know what to do, or I need this buzz or something, because I'm either feeling too sad or upset about what's going on.
Rita, you will start this question. How do you think AACPS should further help the growing population of non-native English-speaking students and increasingly diverse members of our community?
So I have two solutions for that. The first being making them feel included in the school environment. This past month, I organized an international night at my school to celebrate all the different cultures that exist there. And I think that it had a huge impact on making those students that may not necessarily speak English have the ability to share their culture and their language with other people that are going through that same same problem. So setting up events like that to celebrate diversity is a huge step forward, but also investing in our ESOL programs and making sure we have teachers that are equipped to meet the influx of students that do not speak English that continue to grow in our population. So having those teachers equipped with the resources that they need to assist those students and assimilating them, let me go back on that, making them feel accepted in the community that they are, with who they are, as well as making them feel part of the larger community as a whole.
So I completely agree with Britta. I do think that ESOL funding and stuff should be increased, because I was an ESOL student myself, and now I'm an AP Lang, and it's so inspiring to look back at my transition to see that I cried every day in elementary school because I didn't know what people were saying, to now being an AP Lang and being able to have this conversation and debate with fellow students of mine. And I do think that diversity also plays a big part of it, accepting and knowing what people are saying and just kind of feeling complete as a whole within your school is a great factor on accepting everyone, whether it be based off language differences, sexuality, or other factors.
So the Hispanic population in Anne Arundel County Public Schools is over 11,000, and some elementary schools are over 50% Hispanic students. So I do think it's important that we invest more in our ESOL program. Without them learning English, there's no way they can assimilate themselves into our community, and there's no way they can further their future without going down the path of many other lost souls. I also think it's important that we do have more diversity programs and more diversity events to help explain to them and to other people that they're the same as you just because they don't speak your language, and that you can accept them just for being who they are.
From Sophia, who is a Old Mill High School sophomore. With the racial tensions going on in the county, what are your plans to create more acceptance of different ethical groups and to promote diversity?
So I think going back to diversity again and the global citizenship class, having that be required for all incoming ninth graders, I think is so great in the way that it helps everyone understand that you're working together as a group with everyone's unique attributes. And also I think that diversity nights like Rita hosts, and I know that there's multiple other factors at other schools that do this as well, have a great impact on that, alongside more issues alongside more process and progress with our unity chains, community circles, and just overall kind of feeling as a whole within our group.
So racial tensions are a big issue in our county. I do believe that the new GCPA class that all freshmen will be required to take is a great step forward in the right direction. I also believe that along with that, like I said in my previous answer, more diversity events and more diversity programs would help to push the idea that just because they have a different creed than you doesn't mean they're different from you, and that you can accept them. And then I think we should also have more peer one-on-ones with each other. Just when you have a difference, I think we should solve it out face-to-face with everybody involved.
So I believe that the Global Community Citizenship course is a great step forward, as both Charmy and Tyler said. But I think that the issue of racism is something that stems from the home. It's a community issue. It's not just a school issue. So as much as the school system can do its part seeing a kid 6 hours a day, we have to work on it as a community and as a whole. And that means holding nights like we did at in the Chesapeake cluster after events occurred there to make sure that the parents, community members are involved in these solutions. And the greatest job as the student member of the board would be to listen, because I could sit up here and tell you what to do, but I'm not from those communities that are experiencing racism. So to go out there and listen would be my job, to figure out what we can do to move forward with issues like this, because it's quite frankly not fair to anyone to go to school and feel like left out or experience racism. I have, and I know what it feels like, but I know it's so much worse in other communities, so it's my job to go out there and listen to what they think is best for them to do and move forward.
Savannah, we're going to go forward.
Yes.
So I do agree with what Rita said, that it does stem from home, but sometimes I also think it stems from the lack of awareness. I know that racism is such a prominent problem and a lot of people know about it, but a lot of people don't think it actually exists. Like when I'm going to school and I'm being called Osama, it's much different than other people going to school and having a normal life and then coming home and just saying, oh, racism is a problem, but it's not as prominent as I think it is.
Do we have any other rebuttals? Okay. Global community citizenship recently became a graduation requirement. How would you respond to a parent who states, my child doesn't need this course? Beginning with Tyler.
I would respond that if that's your opinion, then okay, but don't let that take that away from the other students whose parents want them to take the class or who they want to take this class, and other students who do need this class, because just because you don't want your child to take it doesn't mean that that all the other kids in Anne Arundel County Public Schools shouldn't be allowed to take it. Because I think it's going to be very influential in solving many of the tensions we have with each other in our school system.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Global community citizenship recently became a graduation requirement. How would you respond to a parent who states, my child doesn't need this course?
So as much as parents are important, and as a community leader, which SMOB is if I am to become the SMOB, I have to listen to their opinions. At the end of the day, I'm representing student voice. And in my visits throughout the county over the course of this election and for previous things I've done with CRASC, I've come to the conclusion that as a whole, the students want this course. They want an opportunity to share their differences. They want ways to talk about things that are hard to talk about, because that's what's going to make them feel like they're part of a community. And they're tired of being put in groups because of race or culture or anything else that separates them, because in the end of the day, they go to a school and want to be part of that school community. So I'm here to represent student voice, and if that's what the students want, that would be my response.
So, as advocating for the students' rights, I would try to talk to the parent about the benefits with the course. In an increasingly problem-based learning curriculum, I do think that learning more about everyone's unique attributes and how how everyone works with them is a great factor in helping with your course in general, and also helping with future jobs and working with others. Yeah.
Explain the role of politics in the work of the Anne Arundel County Public School Board of Education.
So we are currently moving into a fully elected board in the 2020 school year, which means that there will be politics involved in the Board of Education. And I think that as a student member of the board, I have to listen to multiple special interest groups like CRASC, like TAC, like SAAC, all groups that may or may not align with certain political groups. So although it's evident that politics will become more and more involved in the student member of the board position, like I said earlier, it's the student voice as a whole, so I may sit up here and think something personally, but I'm here to represent the students, so that's what I would do. I would listen to what's most important to everyone all together and move forward.
So I think that the role of politics in the Board of Education is that they help us reach a common goal of seeing our students succeed and become future leaders and workers in our community. So I think that they also help us with our curriculum through federalism and working through our standards and requirements that we have to comply with as a county. Our Maryland state and just United States in general requirements of either environmental literacy, science, and stuff like that will help us determine what our curriculum will be in general.
So politics is very much embedded into our school system. Since we're moving to an all-elected board, even though you're not allowed to run on party, you still have an ideology, and so they're gonna bring that ideology to the school board. And also, we can't. There's a lot of things that Anne Arundel County Public Schools can't do without the county support, and the county council is partisan. So you also have to work with them and working with their parties that are already established in there, and politics are going to become a lot more embedded into our school system just because of the getting elected, and now you're doing things for your constituents instead of just trying to get renominated by the governor.
What steps would you take to further school safety measures?
So I think that...
Sorry, this is, yeah, it's Charmy.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So our school safety funding has increased by $99,000. Yes, that's how you use math. And for the next fiscal year. And I think that school safety also stems from mental health, and making sure every student feels safe and welcomed at the school is a big factor of how students will act with their other peers. I know that there's a lot of toxic vibes within the school, from class rank and arguing with each other to just feeling upset that they might have gotten a higher score than you on something, or they might bully you because you got a higher score on something. So I think that helping everyone be nicer to each other through like Be Nice campaigns and stuff like that to help achieve the common goal of graduation, because everyone wants to do a different thing with their life.
So I think that when we focus on mental health, the problem of school safety is also going to decrease as when mental health goes down, because most violence in our schools happens because students don't feel accepted, students don't feel like they have anything left to live for, students don't feel like there's any other choice except to lash out. So when we focus on mental health and making people feel more included and involved, because that's what gangs provide, and some students do join gangs. So if we can take that and put it into their everyday lives, they no longer will need that fulfillment from gangs that perpetuate violence in our schools and our county.
So I think we have to consider the reality of school safety, and we don't have a lot of control on a local level over the atrocities that we've seen occur, the reasons why those atrocities have occurred in schools across the nation. So when we consider that reality, putting into perspective that we need to fund those double door systems in our schools that we've already started at Annapolis and Severna Park to make sure that we have a secure school environment, and then also working on the other side of the issue, which is making sure that our students are prepared if a tragedy is to occur. I have spoken with Mr. Doyle Batten, who's in charge of school security for all of Anne Arundel County, and he said that we need to kind of make a more proactive stance on our drills and make sure our students are prepared in case something is to occur, but also work on the back end, which is mental health, to make sure that it never even gets to that point.
Yes.
So Rita makes a good point of actually taking measures within and from outside the school. I know that the whole buzz-in system at many different schools is really helpful in identifying who's coming in, and the whole double door that was implemented last year and is still being implemented is really helpful in making sure that students feel safe alongside drills. I know Rita just mentioned that, but I think that's also really important, having students know how they can be safe in case of an emergency, especially with the different school systems.
So our next question is actually a fun one. If you guys look to the back screen, there's actually a picture of Mr. Mosier's new dog. So your question is, beginning with Tyler, Mr. Mosier just got a new greyhound. What should he name him and why?
I think he should name his greyhound after a president. My two kittens are named Ronnie and Reagan after Ronald Reagan, so I think he should name his dog after a president.
All right, so I'm not that much of a pet person. I'm allergic to dogs and cats, so I don't think I'm the person to ask for this, but I think I honestly don't know. Whatever works for him. Let's see. Spotty. It has spots. Spotty. Like what? I don't know. I'm not a. That's it.
So as a huge lover of dogs myself, I love them with a passion. I think this dog should be named Doug. Doug sounds a lot like dog. And when I was thinking about this dog, I just looked at him and I saw how much of a dog he looks like. He's just so happy and excited. He's all cozied up and he's just so cute. Sorry, I get really worked up talking about dogs. So I think Doug's a good name for this dog.
Sure.
So Doug reminds me of the dog from Up, and so I think that's an even better reason you should name it Doug.
Doug.
All right.
I agree.
I think I'd probably have to go with something having to do with the weather. I think it's a good one. So, next question, beginning with Rita. What role do you believe standardized testing plays in our school system?
Personally, I think it's an inaccurate way to measure the intelligence of students. I think their investment in extracurricular activities and following what they're most passionate about, taking classes that they care about, like art, music, is a better representation of what they care about. However, the reality is that we're working with state requirements that have us take these tests. So I think that as a county, we should work on having investing as less money as possible into standardized testing and putting it towards these arts and music programs where students have the opportunity to follow their passions and be good at something that they know that they like, rather than sitting for hours and taking a test that most of the time the scores don't even count for.
So I'm a firm believer that you are not defined by a number. I think that you are so much more than that. Like Rita said, you're built up on your co-curricular activities, your beliefs, you as a person, your personal characteristics, and also academic performance. But I don't think that one day, a few hours in that day, should define your worth as a person. Especially with a community and kind of era where schools are going away from testing requirements, not requiring SAT scores, ACT scores, and so much more. Students have testing anxiety, and sometimes they're just having a bad day, so that one score can't predict or depict what that student is as a whole.
So while I think that standardized tests are a good way of gaining data about how our school system is possibly doing, I don't think it should be a determinant for how a student is placed in a class. Like personally, in middle school, my sister did bad on Park, and so she was removed from an accelerated program without any sort of recommendation from her teachers or any talking to my parents about it. And so and she's really bright, honestly. So that's why I think standardized tests shouldn't be a determinant of how students should be placed in classes.
From Nick at Annapolis Middle School, he's in 7th grade. What are your thoughts on facility improvements for current schools?
So, hey Nick, I think that facility improvements are very important. I know in my community challenge class currently, we are working on a project that kind of shows how the prettiness of a school from the outside and the appealingness of a school can lead to better testing scores, better, like, improved mental health, and just happiness in general. I know we all are in a little bit of envy when we see Severna Park and all those windows and the entirely pretty building with the cool little water fountains that just magically fill up the bottles. So that's something I think that facility improvements work towards.
So in my platform, facility improvements are something that I think is crucial to the environment, because so many of our schools don't have the proper insulation and AC units and heating units that are efficient enough to heat or cool the whole school without damage to the environment that's unnecessary. So facility improvements to me would mean bettering the environment and becoming more efficient, and also fixing the way that open-aired classrooms were walled up, because at South River you have pockets of really hot and you have pockets of really cold because no one thought about thermodynamics when they just threw up walls.
So the equitable distribution of funding is a huge part of my platform. In my visits across the county, I have noticed that each school system and each school has a different thing that they ask for. And some of the schools that I've been to, like Oldville High School and Glen Burnie High School, simply want clean restrooms and walls so that they don't hear other teachers yelling at them and kids throwing things over those dividers that clearly don't work. So I think before we can talk about all these great improvements with mental health and diversity and all of these things, let's very first and foremost think about the basic needs like walls in classrooms that are a school safety issue. And I mean, there was a brick falling through the wall at Old Mill the other day. Like, that's just something that shouldn't happen because it's 21st century school system. We need to be up to date.
Considering recent national events, student activism has been on the rise. How do you think AACPS should go about supporting this movement?
I think AACPS should support students in any sort of activism they do that isn't harmful to the learning environment of students and isn't disrupting students from getting the education they need. So anything off campus or anything that's designated by the school, like out on the field or something, that you take a break from would be a great idea.
I think Anne Arundel County puts out the world's future leaders, and we've seen that. We send so many students to wonderful schools with scholarships and all sorts of things, and a lot of the reasons why these kids are doing this is because they've been involved in student activism and they're chasing what they believe in and fighting for what they believe in, just as I am right here. So I think that the Anne Arundel County should continue to allow these students to express their views, like Tyler said, as long as they don't cause a disruption to the school environment, and definitely believe students when they say things with opportunities like CRASC and student member of the board that gives them a platform to say what they believe in and continue to have these opportunities so that we can, again, push forward with what the students believe. It's our school system. We should have a voice.
So I think that Anne Arundel County has shown us that our voice matters in many different ways. They've shown us through CRASC, SGAs, student member of the board, and us having a full voting right. Also through our programs. So Chesapeake Bay Foundation just worked on a climate change activism program and march with a student leader. And I think that, again, with what Rita said about Anne Arundel County just birthing so many leaders and sending them off to great places, that kind of stems from us knowing that our voice matters and that we make an impact in society.
What is your stance on removing class rank and eliminating valedictorian and salutatorian?
So I believe class rank is a very pressing issue. It's something I've heard a lot about on my school visits and working with CRASC. Personally, I've come to the consensus that a lot of students believe that class rank is something that is a motivator for them, and that they would like to keep it because it allows them to push forward and it keeps them competitive. Because if we look at it realistically, when you look at the real world, there will be other things that will differentiate you as how qualified you are. So whether right now it's class rank, it'll be something else down the line. And the argument that it does create a lack of unity in the school system is true. It causes students to compete with one another, but that's the reality of the world. And I think when we're talking about mental health and the impact that class rank has on it, we have to teach students to be accepting of themselves and where they stand, and continue to work hard to get to where they need to be, and understand that those numbers don't define them.
So I think that although it is a great measure and it's a great way to compete with each other and motivate you, I do think that it's very toxic. I am my class's current valedictorian, and I know that it stems off into so many more mental health issues, and it rides so many toxic just views and standpoints. From bringing up going back to the point that you're not defined as a number. I don't want to be known as valedictorian, or I don't want the salutatorian to be known as a salutatorian. I want them to be known as what they're interested in. I know that for magnet programs, it's so hard to also do that. So at South River, we haven't had a STEM valedictorian in 5 years. So those opportunities that aren't always given to everyone can also matter, because they do feel insecure that, hey, maybe I'm not in the top 10%, and maybe they should all work towards Latin honors.
So while I'm definitely not South River's class of 2020's valedictorian, I don't think that the class rank is necessary anymore. Most colleges don't even look at it as a requirement to get into school, and I do think it creates a type of an unnecessary competition that isn't needed in our school system. Most students already are motivated enough to do well just by their GPA, and class rank isn't really anything that is important except for comparing yourself to your friends, and that's not really something that should be done in our school.
This is just a reminder that you guys have rebuttals.
Okay, I was just gonna go ahead.
Yeah.
All right. So 2 of our neighboring counties have taken away the class rank system. And speaking with Dr. Arlotto, I found that there are no current statistics on the reduction of mental health issues in those counties by taking away class rank. So if those statistics are to come up and it shows that class rank not being there actually improves the mental health of students in the school system, I'd be open to considering removing that system. But currently, I think we need to work on the basic level needs of students that include providing those counselors and providing those psychologists when it comes to facing mental health issues.
So I think that also with people that don't want to go to college and want a job right after school and high school, I think high school should be a place where they're coming and learning something new every day. I know in middle school I loved coming in and learning, and in high school now I feel like every test that I take is something that's going to define me, and every score that I get is something that people can laugh at me with. And I feel like a lot of students also feel that. So the common goal of graduation, I think, is really important, and maybe not just defining to be the best.
Sarah from South River, who is a junior, asks, how have you been helping the environment, and what do you think ACPS could do to help the environment? Charmy goes first.
So I think that environmental literacy is so important, especially in this day and age. I am currently through STEM in a green technologies pathway, where I am the leader of my environment and society class. So we just started a recycling initiative at South River, where we're working towards getting one of those fancy water bottle things I mentioned earlier, and also paper recycling. I also just love environmental literacy in general. I know that I have one of those reusable straws that connects to my keychain, where you can just whip out the straw any place you go, save the turtles. And I think things like that, every little thing that you do makes such a big impact, and it doesn't seem like it, but I know that working hard and working towards the improvement of our future generations to come is so super important. So we should work on that.
So environmental literacy is something very important to my campaign. I believe that we should have more things like Arlington Echo, that we should have more projects like the things that Arlington Echo do around our county. One of the things that, jumping off of the paper recycling that we're doing at South River, that I'd like to do is start moving towards paperless schools. By investing in technology and tablets, we would eliminate the need for paper by doing everything on like an iPad or a Chromebook. Also, like from a previous question with improvements to our buildings, making sure that they're up to code with environmental standards, and making sure that their efficiency is good for the environment is another important issue.
So I'm a firm believer that change comes from policy. And as a class secretary of legislation, I've written testimonies on climate change bills. One of them was funding climate change education, which was passed in the House. And as a student in IB Environmental Systems and Societies, and last year a student in AP Environmental Science, I believe that environmental literacy, like they both said, is very important. We are the future, and it's our world that we're going to grow up in, so we have to figure out how to fix it, because unfortunately the adults haven't given us that great of an earth to deal with. So focusing on making sure that we have those environmental literacy programs and continue to fund those classrooms and trips to Chesapeake Bay Foundation, Maritime Museum, local organizations that will provide us with the opportunity to continue to find these solutions is my plan.
If you could move funds from one part of the budget to something you feel is underrepresented, where would you move the money from, and where would you move the money to? Starting with Tyler.
So I don't quite know where I'd be able to move the money from, because there's so many important things that the budget includes that need funding, but I would like to move the funding towards technology. We're moving into a society where learning to use Microsoft Excel is becoming more important than learning handwriting, unfortunately. So moving money towards technology and technology investment and making sure that our students are up to date with the best of the 21st century skills of computing and computer science and typing is something that I feel is very important.
So currently we spend a lot of money on textbooks and standardized testing, as I mentioned earlier. So I think moving money from there and putting it into those basic facility programs that we discussed earlier, making sure that we have walls in our classrooms, that we have clean water fountains to drink water from. Those basic needs are, again, it comes down to once we get past those and making sure that our school system is up to date, we can move forward with the other things like investing in more mental health resources like counselors, like psychologists, and that's a huge part of my platform, equitable distribution of funding again.
So I think that alongside Britta, I do think that we spend a lot of money on textbooks and standardized testing. And again, in a world that's going incredibly tech-based, a lot of the softwares that we buy don't need to be renewed, and we can buy textbooks online and stuff like that. So spending so much money on textbooks can be prevented, and I would take money from that. And I think I would put it towards athletic and extracurricular programs. I think that extracurriculars and athletics help define a student, and they help kind of well-round the student and help them make friends and just kind of spend their time not worrying about themselves as a number, but rather them and what their beliefs are.
How will you address constituents of different socioeconomic levels?
So as I've mentioned, I've been around the county as part of my campaign, and I've found that a lot of the students who come from more affluent communities, their parents have the ability and the time to come to board meetings and to advocate for what they believe their students need. And unfortunately, there's a big part of our population concentrated in certain areas like Brooklyn Park, which has a 27% poverty rate, that their parents work 2 jobs, and sometimes they don't have, they don't live with their parents. They can't come and tell us at the board what they need. So scheduling special meetings with those communities and making sure that we're listening to them, because again, that's the biggest part of the student member of the board job. And that's how I would address people who come from different socioeconomic backgrounds.
So I would also address people from different socioeconomic backgrounds by helping them feel like they are a part of the community. I know that from schools that have a very affluent influence and have lots of fundraisers and things like that, students might feel kind of peer pressured into doing more negative things in order to gain that money. But I do think that alongside helping students get internships and career-based jobs and stuff like that, students can make a change in their own life, as well as kind of working towards, well, as someone that's been in different socioeconomic backgrounds throughout my life with my parents' job of business management, I do know that sometimes it gets hard, and even with just the closest of friends and just a good, healthy relationship with people and teachers helps you get through those times. So positive mental health initiatives would help.
So I would address people from different socioeconomic backgrounds, not only through the board meetings, but like Frida said, a lot of them can't attend board meetings, like people from concentrated areas like in North County and Annapolis. So I would address those students and their needs by attending the board events at the different schools and talking to the different students at those schools about what they feel needs to be done in their community and in their school to help them get out of the current situation they're in their future, and guarantee that they are not in the same position that they always are for the rest of their lives.
I know for a lot of students at my school, school is a safe space for them, and they rely on free and reduced lunch and staying after school so that they don't have to go back to communities that they may feel that they are in danger in. So continuing to fund those after school programs and having a place for those students to stay, because that's where they feel safe. And also those free and reduced lunch programs, because that's, again, the school system has a much larger part in those students' lives than sometimes students who come from higher economic backgrounds may not realize.
Emily, a Southern High School senior, asks, how will you balance your rigorous class schedule and requirements to graduate with the duties of the board?
All right, so my schedule is pretty open next year. I only have to take an English and a math, and so my graduation requirements are mostly filled. So, short answer, but that's how it is.
So as I said, I attend Annapolis High School, which I can walk from to here. So I will have a car by the time I hopefully become a student member of the board, but that's also an easy access to me. But I'm an IB student, so I'll be taking 6 courses next year and 1 free period each day. However, I believe that I have done a great job as the CRAS Secretary of Legislation balancing all of those things and have positive relationships with all of my teachers to make sure that I can balance that coursework. And when it comes down to it, I think it's important to still be a student while you are the student member of the board, because although you're a student leader, you're a student first. So to stay in the school system and go to school every day is equally as important as managing your duties as a student member of the board.
So if elected, I will also have a partial schedule of 6 classes, and I do also think that student member of the board would be my priority, because instead of thinking about myself, I would also be thinking about our entire student body as a whole. I would have a car, and South River is pretty close to here too. It's just over that bridge, so I'd be able to get here and there pretty quick, especially with my driving abilities, which are really bad, by the way. So I think that also with my rigorous class schedules, I know that my teachers are very helpful and my class sizes are small, so I can go into them and have help from my guidance counselor to help me succeed next year.
I'd just like to add, like I mentioned in my opening remarks, that I'm really passionate about this, about student advocacy. So at the end of the day, when you're passionate about something, you will find every way to make it happen. And I just wanted to add that because I love this job, whether it be the future student member of the board, hopefully, or just being a student advocate in general and continuing that, I will make this my top priority.
This will be our final question for the evening. What do you plan to do if SMOB does not work out?
As I just said, I plan to continue with CRASC. I believe it has been a great opportunity for me to learn about myself and to interact with students across the county and focus on what is most important to me. And like I said, the rest of the kids in the county. So I would continue with student advocacy and things in the community, such as like I did with as a fellow for the Speaker of the House, and understanding that we are one big community and that I will do my part to continue in contributing to that.
Sorry, Tyler, or Charmy, but I'm going to come in for a second. I am incorrect. That is not the last question. I just can't tell time. But continue.
So if SMOB doesn't work out, or student member of the board does not work out, I would try to involve myself in CRASC. I think that what Rita does and what everyone else in the audience right now, what they do is so empowering and passionate, especially with the middle school leadership events and everything. So shout out to you guys. I think it's really cool what you guys are doing and inspiring. I'm also a really active participant in Red Cross. So I would continue that with summer blood drives and 4 blood drives at South River next year. And within the Rotary, working with Interact and working with other fellow clubs to help promote helping everyone regardless of what they do.
So I think if SMOB doesn't work out for me, I'm going to intern for a family friend who is a lobbyist on Capitol Hill and do policy work that's on a national level. But I also would like to join the PAGE program that Ms. Pellegrin does. And I would also like to be more, not as involved as Rita and Charmy could be in CRASC, but a little bit involved in CRASC, like attending CRASC meetings and attending CRASC events.
Do you support the issue of tracking or funneling students into a field of study, such as STEM, CAT South, CAT North, or AAP courses?
So I do not agree with funneling students into these programs. I think that the liberty of choosing your own schedule, especially with so many requirements that are already forced upon us, I think that a little bit of freedom and liberty helps define a person and helps them study what they're interested in. But I do believe that STEM, IB programs, and other magnet and charter programs are so great in the matter that they help. They just help you so much in life. In STEM myself, I know that I've just become so much better of a public speaker, even though this problem might have not said so. And I've just worked so much better in a group and just with people in general. And I also feel like the push for students to go into problem-based learning is really helpful because it helps them in their future careers.
So I also don't believe in the funneling of students into magnet programs. And I also don't believe that administration should be pushing their students into harder AP classes just to make the school look better. I think what we do need, though, is more things like the Center of Applied Technologies. Because even though our economy is moving towards skill-based, there's higher skill-based. There's a lot of jobs that are still needed in skill-based. So another Center of Applied Technology or more funding towards our Center of Applied Technology, North and South, would be something that I'd advocate for more.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Do you support the issue of tracking or funneling students into a field of study, such as STEM, CAT South, CAT North, or AP courses?
I think you have to consider how that funneling or tracking is happening. So if a teacher feels that a student would be very well suited for a magnet program, I think it's a great opportunity for them to talk to the parents and make sure that they have that option to go into that magnet program. I know as an IB student, it has been incredibly life-changing for me to be a part of that, and allowed me to explore many of my different interests. So I think magnet programs are great, and we should continue to fund them, but also make them more make students more aware that they exist and parents more aware that they exist, so that we can get a wider variety of students coming into those programs. So not necessarily on tracking on the basis of test scores or anything of that sort, but on the basis of interest. So if somebody is really into science and math and a teacher thinks that they would be wonderful for the STEM program, I think that's a great opportunity.
So I think that another aspect of STEM and all these programs is that we should expand on how many programs and locations there are. I know that there's a lot of waiting lists and a lot of people that get rejected from the program each year, even though they might be well suited for it. So I think that expanding the programs and making them a little bigger than they are could also help with what people are interested in.
So one of the things that my campaign team discussed was having more programs like STEM. Like an idea would be more a program for business management in another school, just so that you can have the mixing of students from different schools to other schools in areas that they really like. Like I know there's like STEM, and then people who want to go into business, you could have the business management program at like another school.
So I know alongside our magnet programs, we also have school-specific programs, and that are with change engineering. So expanding those programs within the school, so that students at that school have the opportunity to pursue that if that's something that they're interested for a career or just by passion. And when we are expanding these programs, I think it's important to keep in mind transportation. A lot of students really need those buses back and forth from school. And after school buses, so that they can do those after school activities and also take part in these programs that are beneficial.
How do you believe AACPS can enhance its systems of career readiness?
So, like I said in the last question, more funding towards our CAT South and our CAT North and maybe another Center of Applied Technology would be very beneficial to making sure our students are career readiness. And also investing in technology. Like I said before, we're moving towards a 21st century where technology is going to be dominant, where computers are going to be the main way people make money. So making sure that our students have the tools and resources that they have in school, like technology and centers of applied technologies, is something that I would advocate for, to make sure that they're ready for their careers.
So I agree with that, but I think we should also work on our business partnerships with people in the community, local businesses, to make sure that we have internship opportunities for students to pursue different careers. And I think that's a great way to get Anne Arundel County students their feet in the door before they even go to college. I know that's what I did as an intern for the Speaker of the House. So I think that's a great way to focus on career readiness, and also offering classes that are up to date with, like they mentioned, the new kinds of careers and degrees that colleges are looking for. I know we're partnered with Anne Arundel County Community College to make sure that students have the opportunity to take part in classes that will prepare them for the careers that they're interested in.
So I also agree with expanding CAT North, CAT South programs alongside charter and STEM and IB programs. But I do know that one of AACPS's strategies for next year is to increase the number of students, increase the percentage of students completing career-based internships through the signature program, as Rita said, with mock interviews, job shadows, and Naviance. So I think that's a great resource, and also having students understand that they do have many resources through MAC and VIA, which Anne Arundel County provides, AACC providing online databases if you get a library card, which is available to all students at AACC, Anne Arundel County Public Schools. So things like that, I think, help expand and help us prepare for college and careers.
If you could change one specific thing about your school, what would it be?
I would change how separated our IB program is from the rest of the school. So I would focus on making sure that although we have classes with IB students, that we interact with everyone else. I know I make a special effort to talk to students who aren't in the IB program, talk to students who are in different grades, because it has to do with that unity by organizing things like International Night and other community events, participating in community service activities, especially with students that don't come from the same walks of life as I do, because that makes us well-rounded people and it prepares us for the real world. Because we're going to have to interact with students who are different than us. So that's what I would change about my school, make sure that we get to have classes with people that aren't like us or aren't necessarily in the same program as us.
So within South River, I think I would change the class sizes. I know that there are a lot of students within one class, and even though I'm in STEM, where I do have the privilege of having smaller class sizes, when I am in a class with everyone and people that I know, our class sizes can range to 30 to 40 people, and it's just so much harder developing a relationship with your teacher that way, and sometimes students feel like they're not heard and that their hardships in that class can't be solved because they're not being helped properly.
So in South River, I would change that. Like she said, there's not unity between the IB programs and Gen Pop. I would change the disunity between STEM and Gen Pop at South River. And I would also like to make it so that Gen Pop students could take STEM classes, because a lot of STEM classes aren't offered to Gen Pop students, and I just don't think that's very fair. And on a lighter note, I would change the fact that our SAT scores were invalidated.
One more thing I'd like to add, going along with the fact of IB students being treated differently, I think putting consistency when applying the code of conduct to all students, regardless of race, or I know that's a big issue at my school, where sometimes people are pointed out because they're not an IB student or because they look a certain way and they get in trouble while someone who looks different may not. So working on that consistency with our advocates and administration to make sure that it's existent.
Also, on a lighter note, I know that South River has a 15-minute school bathroom policy where you can't leave the first and last 15 minutes of class to use the restroom. And according to statistics, you are missing the least amount in class when you leave in the beginning and end of class. So I think you should be able to leave then, because if you leave in the middle of class, you're initiating a 4.5-minute long lapse in attention for other students.
What life experience do you think best prepared you for this position, and why?
So I think that what best prepared me for my position, or for this position in general, is one day when I work at Crofton Care and Rehab Center, which is a nursing home in Crofton, and one day when I was walking in, I just realized that I loved this place so much that every time I walked in, I had a smile on my face, and I loved how everyone was helping each other regardless of how they are, what they have, what they're diagnosed with, and things like that, regardless of race, what their backgrounds were, who they fought for in wars. So I think that's so impactful, and it goes back to my involvement with the Red Cross, showing how Clara Barton helped anyone. She didn't care about what side of the war they were on, but she helped people that were in pain, that needed help, that deserved a second chance at life.
So I think that's hard to follow, but I think what experience has best prepared me for this position is my love for government and politics and policy making. One day around middle school, I realized that there are so many things in our country, in our community, and in our state that just need fixing. And I really do like the feeling that you get when you fix something and your ideas have come to life in actual paper and they're actually being enacted. And now what you thought of is now going to go out and help people. And that's why I think I'm prepared for this position.
So professionally speaking, I think being the CRAS Secretary of Legislation has best prepared me for this position. I've spent the last year learning the inner workings of our county. I've watched Josie work and become the Vice President of the Board of Education, which is a huge deal, and to witness that has been an honor in itself. I've spent hours reading legislation and picking it apart and writing testimonies. So when it comes to understanding how policy works in the real world, I think I have a great background on that. But on a more personal note, I think every day watching my parents work has prepared me. They're both immigrants, and they have worked all the way from the bottom up, and that's what they've instilled in me, the ideals of always working hard, and that it's okay to end up wherever you do because that's predetermined, but always put your best foot forward and hold yourself accountable, and also understand that there are always people relying on you. There's someone that needs to step up and say something and make sure that you are that person because someone else at that time may not be able to.
If you could recommend any book to us, what would it be?
I would recommend The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand. I really like that book because it best describes my philosophy in life, which is the philosophy of objectivism, which is the theory that that you should only be living the life that you feel happiest with, and that the point of life is to make you as happy as possible no matter, and you can't take away someone else's happiness, and they can't take away your happiness, and if they do that, then you should push them out of your lives, and you should just make your life happiness. And I think also that book has a very interesting plot line.
So I recommend a philosophy book called A Mind for Numbers. I remember having a conversation with my theory of knowledge teacher about how I simply struggled with math and how I couldn't figure it out. And she explained the science to me about how your brain works, and honestly, if you're really stuck on something, there is a way to train your brain to think differently, and that's a big part of this job as student member of the board. You have to problem solve. So I read that book and I learned all these techniques of how you can put yourself in a position to think differently, switch between diffuse mode thinking and focus mode thinking, and understanding the science behind how do we problem solve even when we think that we can't do something.
I would recommend the book The Tao of Pooh, The Tao of Pooh, like Winnie the Pooh, sorry. I guess I just couldn't speak. So the book is telling you about living in the moment and not worrying so much about what's going to happen years across the line. I'm a firm believer of the butterfly effect, and I do think that one decision does impact your others. So when I was younger, I did believe, I was so stressed because I thought that one mistake in my life would end up with me, an adult, just completely ruined, with my life ruined. But after a teacher recommended this book, I did realize that life is more than just worrying about the future. It's it's just living in the moment. It's YOLO, really.
On a regular basis, you will hear questions and concerns about individual school issues, teachers, and administrators. How will you go about following up and seeing these issues addressed?
So I think face-to-face interaction is the best way to connect with people and understand what's most important to them. So like I said, as I've done with my campaign as the CRAS Secretary of Legislation, to continue to meet with people, and once if a problem is addressed, to write back to them, to go see them in person, to make sure that I'm a reliable representative for them. And I think, again, face-to-face meeting is the best way to do that, and taking that extra time out of my day to do that for them, because each individual opinion does matter. Those are the people that will hopefully be putting me up here.
Do you mind repeating the question?
On a regular basis, you will hear questions and concerns about individual school issues, teachers, and administrators. How will you go about following up and seeing these issues addressed?
I would like to say that everyone's voice does matter, and I would try my best to see what is going on and finding the root of the problem. But I do know that a skill that is useful for a board member to possess is understanding that the board's vote is about the big picture and not day-to-day management. I don't want one decision to impact the other schools negatively, but I do want to work and help your process in general.
So like Rita said, I'd make sure I'd have face-to-face contact with them, but I'd also make sure I'd have their contact info and the easiest way to reach them so that they can they can reach me anytime and they can tell me what their problems are anytime. I also think that in this position, you'd need to prioritize which issues need to come before others. So a issue that may only be facing a couple of people versus an issue that faces everyone would, in my opinion, need to be addressed before the smaller issue.
Although I agree that that is important, it's a very big part of this job. I think that oftentimes when people sit in positions of power, they forget that there are so many people relying on them, 83,000 Anne Arundel County students. So going back and having that realization that although you are looking for the general good for all of them, there are individual concerns that need to be heard. So making that special effort to hear them.
How can students foster communication between schools?
So I think that students can foster communication between schools through co-curricular programs and things like that. I know that I'm currently a part of the Rotary and Red Cross, and in both of those clubs, we work directly with other clubs like Glen Burnie, Annapolis, and many others to just work together and find common goal in helping people. And then from that, we do build relationships, friendships, stuff like that. I am currently on the PowerHawks 1111 robotics team, in which we have many students from different schoolings, backgrounds, and things like that. And I do know that just bonding with all those people and meeting so many other people at competitions is so empowering, because everyone's experience in school is different and everyone's just lifestyle is different. So getting to know those is really empowering.
So to support school-to-school communication, I would advocate for clubs that you can do with the same club in another school, and I would encourage more like SGA meetings between like school delegations of their SGAs, because they're the ones who are very involved in their school. They're not the most involved and they're not the only ones involved, but they're the ones who are involved, and they are elected by the student body to represent them in their school. So I would push for more SGAs to talk to each other about issues that face their school, that they could also implement ideas into their school.
So for me personally, CRASC has been the best way to interact with students from different schools. I'm happy to say that I have friends from all different schools now because of CRASC. And we hold events like General Assemblies where we bring together students from those different SGAs to discuss issues between their schools. So I think definitely promoting CRASC and making sure that students are aware of that, but also things like the SMOB Advisory Council, which is a great way to have student representatives from all different schools come and talk about what's important to them, and for the student member of the board to listen to what's most important.
What steps would you advocate for to close not only the achievement gap, but the opportunity gap?
So with the achievement gap and the opportunity gap, I think the best way to close that gap is to make sure that they come to school and they feel like they're welcomed and they feel like they have the best opportunity to learn as possible. So one of the things that would need to be done is make sure that they feel safe, and they also need to feel included. So more extracurriculars in schools where the opportunity gap is very large, and more extracurricular and more opportunities for them to get involved in their community, because when you get involved in something and you work hard on something, you realize that there's more to life than what you are currently experiencing, and so then they can go out and better themselves and have the opportunities that they need by meeting people and by doing things in their community.
Could you repeat the question, please?
What steps would you advocate for to close not only the achievement gap, but the opportunity gap?
So again, it comes down to funding. I think that making sure that we fund those basic needs of students, and then holding everyone to an equal standard, but providing everyone with equitable resources to reach that standard. So I believe that students at Severna Park should be held to the same standard of achievement as those at Glen Burnie or Annapolis when provided the same level of resources.
I think this also goes back to class size. Making school a positive place is really important because it has the ability to have teachers and students help you with your problem or with your opportunity. I know with student member of the board, just in general, I've had the help of my campaign team, which is a group of my friends, teachers who are helping me and convincing me to apply for this. And just, I think that building a relationship with your teacher and classmates through smaller class size is a great way of bridging the gap between achievement and opportunity.
I agree with the point that Charmy made, but also it allows for stronger student-teacher relationships, which then creates an individualized learning opportunity. So when students who are struggling with something are in a smaller classroom, they have an easier opportunity to ask questions and to deal with whatever is difficult for them in that class, although they may be excelling in a different course. So considering that class sizes also help with that is important.
Describe your communication style.
I think I am definitely a listener first before I talk. So as I've reiterated multiple times tonight, I like to scope the way that the room is and understand what other people's perspectives are, and to then create one general consensus of what I believe is best and make that statement. And if I am to meet with disagreement, understand that there are other people who will be, more qualified than me. But when it comes to standing my ground on something that I know I genuinely believe, that is something I will continue to do, as I have with Krask, and would love to as hopefully the student member of the board.
I think my communication style goes off to connecting with people. I like knowing my audience and familiarizing myself with them and knowing that, hey, I can befriend you and you can befriend me, and we can kind of work towards a common goal because we're both passionate about the thing that we're working towards, and both of our passion can be worked together and used to just create something amazing. I also think that I am also a listener. I do believe in the fact that your voice matters and that my decisions will be based off what you guys collectively believe in as a whole.
I think my communication style was quiet at first and then involved next. At first, when I start a conversation, I'm trying to grasp how the other person is coming from, and then once I get more comfortable and I understand what they're talking about, I get more involved, and my brain starts drumming up things to say and ideas to push out. So I think that's my communication style.
To add to that, I know we've talked a lot about how we would communicate with students, and that's a big part of it, listening. But as a student member of the board, you would also have to deal with adults. And I believe my communication style is to always remain very professional and understanding that sometimes it's easy to be looked down upon because we are students and to not be taken as seriously. But that comes down to standing your ground and understanding to remain professional just as the adults in the room would, so that you can get your point across just as successfully.
What is one way you have built consensus, and how has it helped you? Define consensus.
So I think consensus is defined as working towards a common goal or helping the most people, and kind of having a commitment to do what's right for everyone, even in the face of opposition. And could you repeat the other part of the question, please?
What is one way you have built consensus, and how has it helped you? And then define consensus.
So one way I've built consensus is working as a leader in many things. I know that many members of a community and many other leaders will try to go for other items, and they'll have many discommunications or disagreements. But I do feel like working to kind of understanding the common goal based off everyone and what they want, and kind of taking little segments of those and reaching a consensus to see which one would be the most beneficial for our group of people.
So I think I've built consensus. I build consensus by making sure everybody is talking and make sure everybody has their own opinion put out, and I make sure that everybody knows that we're on this path and that we're on this goal that everybody else has agreed on. And I think that consensus isn't maybe not agreeing, but I think consensus is knowing that we're going to do this and we're going to do this to get to this. Even if that's not how I agree with it, but I'm not going to deviate from my part just because I don't agree with it.
I would define consensus as taking into consideration all perspectives, statistics, or any other information that may be available, and then determining my personal opinion on something. I think the best way I build consensus is working with students across the county as part of CRASC, and I specifically remember a debate on the Constitution which grew which had many disagreements, and we came to the understanding that sometimes things that have a lot of emotion behind them, it's important to take a step back and almost a break from them and understand that once you remove emotion, to look at that reality and move forward with a cool head and understand that's the best way to go forth.
This will actually be the last question this time. Some students volunteer or get involved in community service activities for the sole purpose of looking good for college. What can be done to encourage more community involvement and create volunteer opportunities unrelated to college?
So I think that we can do that by making more extracurriculars and more community involvement activities that cover a more wide variety of passions. I think that people will do things that they want to do instead of doing it for college because they are interested in it. So if we make sure that that there's a way for everybody to do something that they're passionate about, that they'll do more things for their community without just doing it for college or to look good.
I think it's important to provide students with the opportunity to find those passions. So if that means providing them with after-school transportation so that they can stay after for a club, that's a priority for me. And I think that that's the best way to do so, to understand, to move forward with extracurriculars.
I think a big part of extracurriculars is doing something that you're passionate about and something that you see yourself doing in the future. But with a large group of students, a lot of them don't know what they will be doing in the future, and they're scoping out interests. So I think that a wide variety of clubs and extracurricular activities can help students pick and choose and maybe even kind of go and participate in each of them to develop better relationships that can help them scope out more opportunities and also develop something that they're passionate about.
Some students volunteer or get involved in community service activities for the sole purpose of looking good for college. What can be done to encourage more community involvement and create volunteer opportunities unrelated to college?
I think helping students understand that their own personal value and that their passions are important and relevant to the school system, and providing those opportunities for them to follow them is a huge part of making sure that they can exceed in those extracurricular activities.
So I've been told that we can actually fit one more question in. So our actual final question will be, if you elected the 46th student member of the board for Anne Arundel County, how will you be different?
I think I'd be different because I'd bring my own unique personality and individualism into the board. Everybody has their own unique personality and individual, and even though some things might be done the same way, the way they're done is different for everybody, and I think that's how I'll be different from everybody else.
I think I would be different by trying to put the most passion possible forward in my job, because that's the best thing that's brought me this far. So to continue to do that and set me apart in that way from the rest of the student member of the boards, and also to lead by example, to understand that you don't necessarily always need to talk to be the change. Sometimes you can be silent, and that's equally as important in showing other students how their voice matters, by simply coming to something and attending and understanding what the student member of the board does is a huge part of the job.
I think that my commitment towards the role and also my characteristics of being quirky in a way and kind of appealing to my audience and also the board members in order to say something that I'm passionate about, I think that'll make me a good student member of the board, because it'll help me not only understand more of the students' votes, because I'll be able to form better relationships with them, but I'll also be able to just be committed to the position and be passionate and serious when I have to be.
This concludes the 2019-2020 Student Member of the Board debate for Anne Arundel County Public Schools. Best of luck to all three candidates at the April 11th elections. Good night, and thank you for attending or tuning in to our debate.
Course is the music education program here in Anne Arundel County. Welcome and thanks for joining us for On Course, an Anne Arundel County Public Schools journey. We intend to take you on a fascinating trip throughout the county, featuring the amazing that happens in each of our classrooms every day. Our travels will explore all aspects of the Division of Academic and Strategic Initiatives, whose focus is directed solely towards supporting all students in their learning travels. Advanced Studies and Programs, Curriculum and Instruction, Partnerships, Development and Marketing, as well as our Professional Growth and Development teams all figure prominently in the success of our students.